Hello everyone, in today's video something slightly different. We're going to take a look at backup solutions. Backup solutions in general, but obviously this is a kind of Linux bias channel, so naturally this is backup solutions for the Linux desktop. Now there are two ways you can back up your system. The first is with typical applications such as things like Deja Dupe, Timeshift and rsync. Now those applications are particularly useful for backing up your home folder, your settings, your personal data and files, etc. They aren't quite so good, and in fact I don't think they're very suitable at all for an entire system backup, ready for a complete system restore. For that I would suggest you actually do either an image clone of your partitions, or you actually clone your entire disk to allow a complete backup and, more importantly for the purpose of this video, a complete restore. So the software we're going to look at to do that is called Clonezilla. So we'll take a look at their website here. This is the Clonezilla website, and as you can see this is dedicated to disk imaging and cloning. Now this may be slightly off-putting to some people because of the way this appears, but don't be put off, bear with it, and I'll explain and demonstrate just how simple this is to use. So if we go in first of all to find out how you actually get this, obviously the download section is here, and you can choose your version to download. Obviously I would suggest you download the stable version. It's a very slimmed down version of Debian, so it's a Debian base, and it has no desktop environment on it. Of course, it just has a very simple ncurses based interface dedicated solely to cloning drives and partitions. So once you've downloaded your ISO, you would burn that to usually a USB thumb drive, in the same way that you burn a Linux distribution or indeed a Windows distribution, if that's your poison. And you would then insert that into your disk drive, boot your machine by whichever method you use to boot from the USB thumb drive, and off it will go, and it will launch into the Clonezilla program. So just to give you an idea of what you can expect, let's go to some screenshots. Now you'll see here, this is what you're likely to see when you first boot. So it's not the kind of typical GUI interface that you might be used for. You will be presented pretty quickly with these ncurses kind of blue screens with text. It's a text-based program only, but don't be put off. A lot of people are put off by this kind of interface. It's actually very simple, and we're going to take a look now. So let's switch over to the external capture card, because we want to see what happens from first boot, and we can't do that using the software-based screen capture software. So see you all back here in a second. Okay, so we have rebooted the machine after inserting our USB thumb drive with the image of Clonezilla burned onto that, and this is what we are presented with. So you get several options. First one is the one we want to choose because it's the default option. You can choose some others on here, including one which will give you some speech synthesis if you would prefer to hear the commands. We want to select option number 1. And we wait. Bear in mind this is running off a USB 2 drive, so it's not going to be the fastest, but it's fast enough. So it's built on a very lean Debian base, so it doesn't take too long to load, and there we are. So we are into the first screen, which is our ncurses interface. English is chosen initially as a language. We're going to say yes. Now it says, do you wish to keep the default keyboard layout? It defaults to US keyboard as standard. You can change that if you wish. Given that for most of this we are going to be hitting the enter key or yes and no, it doesn't really make any difference. So I'll just suggest you enter. Now we can actually start Clonezilla, or we can enter the shell and go to a command line prompt. We clearly don't want to do that. We want to go to start Clonezilla. So enter. Now this is where you get your options to choose what you wish to do. So the options are work with disks or partitions using images, or work directly from a disk or partition to a disk or partition. And it's the second option that we want because we want to clone the entire disk to another disk. So go down, select number 2 and enter. Okay, you've got several modes now to choose from. Now beginner mode is fine in most instances. It works perfectly well. If you want more control of what you're doing, then by all means go and select the expert mode. At this point, by the way, if you're using an external drive, you need to make sure that it's inserted and switched on. Clearly, if you're using an internal drive, that's not going to matter. But let's ensure that, there we go, get a drive plugged in. It will now search for the drive, so it lists it in the selection options that are going to follow shortly. So, enter. And again, it's asking us, are we going to do a disk to local disk, or a disk to local disk clone, or a partition to partition, or partition to local disk clone? It's option 1. And I can hear it searching the drives, and it's found all 3. So we currently have 3 drives connected to the machine, a thumb drive aside, of course. We have a number 1 on here, which is the 250 gigabyte Samsung SSD. That's the main system drive that we are cloning. We have number 2 on here, which is SDB, and that's the 1 terabyte media drive that I use on this machine. And we have SDD, which is the 250 gigabyte backup drive that we're going to be using for this disk clone as the backup, or target drive, I should say. So it's now asking us to choose the source. The source is the drive that you wish to clone, not the drive you wish to clone to. It's a drive that contains the information you wish to copy. So in this instance, it's correctly identified drive 1, which is our SSD. Naturally enough, it's now asking where we want to send that image to. And we've got 2 options. We've got our terabyte internal drive, or we've got our USB 3 connected 250 gigabyte spinning drive, which is number 2 on this list. So we're going to select that. You can do some checking while this is going along, or you can skip that. I would suggest you skip. You can check it at the end, and I'll show you how. And it's now asking, what do you wish to do once the process is finished? Do you wish to have a choice between reboot, shutdown when everything is finished, or do you definitely want to reboot or shut down? I'm going to suggest option 1. I'm going to suggest enter to kick off the process. So it's now going away. It's now looking at those drives, and it's asking us now to confirm that we want to proceed. Now this is the point where you need to be very careful, because it's warning you that this process cannot be undone, and you are going to write information to a disk drive. In the process, you will be erasing that drive as it currently stands. So check these numbers, check these labels very carefully. I know that the drive is correct because I've done this previously and I recognise the description. So I'm going to say yes. And then very sensibly asked you to confirm that. So yes again. Do you want to clone the bootloader? Now, if you don't clone the bootloader and you try to boot from this drive, chances are it won't work unless you boot into another drive first, and that bootloader can identify the drive that you are now burning this image to and can load it. So given this is an entire disk backup, I would suggest that you install the bootloader so that when worst comes to worst and you wish to reload this, you reload it in its entirety. So I suggest you press yes here. It's going away, it's going and searching for information, making sure that everything is in order. It's doing its calculations. I can hear frantic writing, or reading rather, of hard drive in the background. And there we go. The process has started. So it's calculating the process time at the moment, and it will shortly tell us how long this process is likely to take. And there we go. Okay, Now I won't make you sit and watch through this entire process. What we'll do now is we'll pause the video and we'll come back when we are near to completion. Okay, we're coming up for the home straight now, as you can see. Process is completing. It says we have 40 or so seconds left. The whole process so far has taken about 7 minutes, which is about normal for the amount of data I've got on this drive. It takes it a while to calculate initially. When it first calculates, it tends to adjust a fair bit as it's going along, but not too long anyway. The whole thing all in is going to take about 8 minutes or so, isn't it? So that's not too bad for an entire disk clone. So obviously that takes longer if you've if your 250 gigabyte disk is full. So you will see shortly what happens next. And there we are. That part is now complete. It's now performing a syncing function. This does take a minute or so as well. And we wait. Anybody know any good songs, any good jokes? Oh, some access. There we are. So the syncing process is finished. It says part clone successfully cloned the device SDA1 to the device and /dev/SDD1, which is correct. It's checking that our newly created drive clone is actually functional. But no matter, it is finished. So, as we asked initially, we were asked for the system to ask us what to do, to prompt us, which it's now doing. So, do you wish to power off? Do you wish to reboot or to start again? So, I think we will reboot, and we'll come back shortly and we'll test this to see if it works. So here we are. This is now booting from our cloned hard drive. Now this is a mechanical drive, of course, so it's going to take a little longer to boot, but looks good so far. And here we are. We are at the login screen. So looking good. Let's get the old keyboard fired up. We should get our desktop in a moment, and we do. So let's just check a few things. Let's load our terminal. And there we are. There is our terminal. There is our file manager. So, all looking good and all working. So I hope you found that useful. As I say, it's always good to back up your your home folder and your personal data and files. But I would also suggest, particularly if you like to play around with distributions on your system, lots of Linux users like to what's called distro hop and try new distributions on bare metal if you're one of those people, and you want to effectively be able to get back to where you were, back to base camp on your trusty distribution at any time. Then this is a good option, because you can just insert this into your machine or choose to boot from it, or if like me you've got an external drive, just plug it in and do a restore back to your main internal drive, and you're back up and running in about 10 minutes, if not less. So hope you enjoyed that, hope you found that useful, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now.